What would you do if you came across a function like this in JavaScript? JavaScript is a great, powerful language, but at times it can be inscrutable. So I recently came across this example, and I had to bend my brain to figure it out. Well, let's get into it and see what it means. So I first came across this concept reading this fantastic article by Eric Elliott on medium.com, A Functional Programmer's Intro to JavaScript, and I'll put the link in the description below. But I got to this part in the document and it started talking about currying, and I looked at this notation and I had a really hard time figuring it out. So let's talk about this today, because it is actually not that difficult to understand. So let's get directly into it. So let's say that we have an array of numbers. I'm going to do a Fibonacci sequence. We love Fibonacci sequences in IT. Now let's say I wanted to filter out only those numbers that were greater than or equal to 4. Well, JavaScript gives you the option for all arrays to call a function called filter. And filter takes an argument, and the argument is a function. So you could do an inline function directly there on the filter. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create a function right here. Let's say greater than 4 is equal to a function that takes variable x, and let's say it returns x greater than or equal to 4. Alright, so what I can do is I can pass gt4 in there, and it will iterate through the entire array, and it will return me only those that are greater than or equal to 4, because it basically passes every single element into this function, which returns true or false. If it returns true, we end up creating a new array with the contents of those that are true. Okay, so I will say result, and we'll do a console log on the result. Okay, so if I execute that, you'll notice that the result ends up being 5, 8, 13, 21. That's kind of exactly what we expect. So that's good. Now, I have a few problems with this. Number one, I've got this 4 buried in here. Nature would tell you that I might say x and y. We might say x greater than y. The problem with that is the filter function takes a single argument. Remember, the filter function is just iterating through the contents of the array. It's passing each individual element into the function. So this function can't take 2 arguments. So this is where this concept of currying functions comes into play. Now, I looked up the definition for currying, and it's talking about reducing something from multiple arity to lesser arity. I don't know about you, but that's not a fantastic definition. I didn't know what arity was right off the bat. So a simplified way of looking at that is arity is kind of like the number of arguments that you're passing into a function, the number of parameters. So like x, y, z, this has an arity of 3, but we actually want to reduce it to an arity of 1 because the filter function expects a function that would take a single argument. So how would we go about that? Because I don't like having that 4 buried in there. Well, there is a way to do it, and what you can do is you could say let high filter equal to a function, and I'm going to have this take the high value, like so the 4, and what this is going to do is it's going to return another function, and that other function is going to take x, and that's going to return x greater than or equal to high. Okay, so now on its own I can't just pass high filter in here. You'll see if I do that and I execute it, it doesn't give me the result I expect. It actually ends up giving me the full array. What I have to do is I need to use this high filter function to give me the greater than 4 function. Okay, so let's just get rid of that greater than 4 function. And what I can do is I can say let greater than 4 equal to high filter 4. I'm going to run this, and well, that didn't work. Oh, of course, I've got to put GT4 in here. I'll execute it. So notice now it gives me the correct results. Now, let's unbend your brain a little bit here, and we'll talk about what happened. So when I call highFilter4, I'm calling this function, it's returning me a function that gives me greater than 4. It kind of bakes that 4 into a new function. So what this is actually doing is it's creating a brand new function for us. It's this inner function. So I've curried this concept of 2 variables that I'm passing in down to 1. Now, that's nice, but it's a little bit wordy. So this is the other leap. The other leap is I can reduce this down using arrow functions in JavaScript. So if we want to talk about the original greater than 4 function, let's go, and I'll just comment this out just so you have it on the screen. Let's go back to the original. Let GT4, we know that that just hard-coded 4 directly into it. What you can do is have this say this. Now this gets a little dicey because of all the greater than symbols. But this is kind of a shorthand for doing an inline function, okay? So what this is saying, the arrow operator says, create me a function. And you got to look at what's on either side of the arrow operator. And what I'll do is I'll actually enclose this in brackets, and that may make it a little bit clearer for you. So take a look at that arrow operator. What it's saying is, create me a function that takes x. And it returns the results of x greater than or equal to 4. Okay? So this is exactly equivalent to what we see here, other than, of course, that would have 4 instead of high. Okay? So this is just shorthand. That arrow operator is just shorthand for function definition. So if I execute that, you see it gives me the results that I expect. Now, I would like to curry that so that I don't bury this 4 deep inside the definition. So what I can actually do is I can say let highFilter equal. Now I'm going to start with this, okay? We know that this isn't the end state. But what we need is, remember, the definition we had up here had a function that returned another function. So I need to take high, I need to take a high value, okay? And it's going to map to a function. So again, the notation is kind of bonkers. If I maybe enclose this in brackets, it may be, again, a little more clear to you. So take a look at the arrow. It's saying, give me a function that takes high and return me this. And this happens to be another function definition. And I forgot to replace this with high. So taken on its own, we can just look at what's in these parentheses and say, okay, I look at that arrow, it takes x, it returns me the results of x greater than or equal to high. Now, I don't know what high is, but high is actually defined by the outer function, okay? So if we then do this, what's happening is 4 is assigned to high, and that will then create another function that will expect x as an argument. I'm not giving it to it right here. It's going to expect x as an argument, but it's going to return me a function that tells me if x is greater than or equal to 4. Okay? If I execute this, we get the result that we expect. Now, why would you want to use such inscrutable notation to do this? Well, a few things. First of all, we need to curry down to a function that takes a single argument. If I want to use the filter on the array, and the filter function is a fantastic feature of an array because I can quickly reduce it down to another array if I need to. So that's number one. I need a curried function that takes a single argument for the sake of the array filter. The next thing is, rather than just using GT4 with the 4 hard-coded in here, I think I do want a situation like this because I can change this to be GT5 easily enough. Change this to GT5 and execute this. Well, that's kind of anticlimactic. I'll say GT6. I'll execute it and you see it works. So this allows me to create many of these filtering functions quickly and easily. And it puts the number, the hard coding, front and center right before I actually use it in the filter. Before, if I had buried it all the way down into my inner function, it wouldn't be obvious what that constant is. Now, why you'd use this notation instead of this notation? Well, I would say it's kind of a matter of preference. This is far more concise, there's no doubt about it, but it is a little more obtuse. But if you know the secret of the arrow operator, and that is just to look on both sides of the arrow operator, this is the argument and this is the result, then that's a nice little mental hint to be able to parse these in the future. And don't be afraid to throw parentheses in there to make it a little bit clearer. The article I read would have showed this as this. And I mean, that's valid and it does work, but I find it extraordinarily difficult to parse in my brain. So I prefer to put in the parentheses. So there you go. That's the arrow operator in JavaScript. That's the currying concept in JavaScript, and it's array filtering. I hope this was useful to you. While you're here, stick around. Give me a like or a subscribe. A like is a small thing for you, but a big thing for me. Thanks for watching.